Hi everyone. Today's video is going to be a little different. When I was a kid, about 12 years old, Santa got me a build-your-own V-8 model engine kit. My father was an auto mechanic and he was very excited to get the opportunity to do something like this with his kit. And I was super excited too. We figured out we would need epoxy and lubricants and all kinds of weird stuff for it. Clearly not your typical model enthusiasts. And sooner or later, we spilled one of them on some piece of furniture, and that was the last time it was touched. So 15 years later, my inner Sheldon-esque need to complete things has reared its ugly head. I want to finish this thing. So I got to looking on Amazon, and I found the exact model that I had when I was 12. The internet's amazing. And it had some iffy reviews for precisely what I was talking about. The epoxy, the lubricant, nothing comes with it. It's kind of meh. And I found a bunch of related ones, and I ended up buying one that doesn't require lubricant or any epoxy, at least as far as I can tell. And it even does some extra cool things. It's got an electric motor, and it's got lights to indicate when the spark plugs are going off, and the timing and everything. So I said, you know what? I will never get to complete this with my father, which was the emotional thing that I wanted to do. But this one I can do by myself, and that's what we're gonna do today. I have no idea how long this is gonna take. I'm probably gonna end up speeding it up. We'll see what happens. So we're gonna cut away to my desk and we're gonna get this going in 3, 2.
Alright, so the first step is obviously to get everything out of the box, sort it all out, figure out what I need to do in the instruction manual, and read all the lovely tips that they give. Fortunately, they have a parts list in there which shows you what numbers are on which board, and each board has numbers on it as well, and some of the parts actually have numbers on them as well, so everything's pretty easy to find with a few notable exceptions. So the first thing they have you do is put together these pistons. Everything snaps together pretty well. Didn't really have any complaints about fitting issues or anything like that. Of course, this plastic is so delicate that you definitely don't want to push it too hard because then you will break it. So now I'm looking for the crankshaft. There she is. I was beginning to wonder how everything was going to fit on there, and then they're like, oh, right, screws. That's what it needs. So it doesn't seem to matter which one goes first on which side or anything like that, because obviously 2 go in each section. Doesn't seem to matter which. Either that or I just got lucky, which doesn't seem likely. Alright, all the pistons are now on the crankshaft. Trick of finding the part. Much harder at the beginning. The larger parts are not numbered, so I guess you're just supposed to identify them visually. Now this is where I really messed up. So they tell you the number of pins on the side which is supposed to have the longer end of the crankshaft on it. And it doesn't seem to match up with the visuals that are in the book. I don't know, either that or I just completely miscounted or messed up, but this is backwards and I don't know it yet. So I realized that it was backwards, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I gotta flip it. And it's actually quite challenging to get it out of there because you have to rotate it and pull out and not let things fall back in, and That was a pain. So now it's in the correct orientation. Fortunately, the base only fits on there one way, so I didn't have to worry about that so much. It's just a matter of whether that long end of the crankshaft is facing on the correct side. Now I second guess myself and flip it back again. I'm like, nah, I was probably right the first time. I wasn't. So it's at this point that I decided to start using their screwdriver instead of mine, because mine isn't long enough to reach down into there. Now we start entering the part where there's asymmetrical components. So one side of the engine is numbered 1 through 4, and the other side is 5 through 8. Obviously, that's the piston numbers, and each side of this is a mirror image of the other side. And fortunately, everything only fits one way. Again, the crankshaft is still backwards, but I won't know that for another couple of minutes here. Now they want me to assemble the inlet and exhaust valves. Now these just fit straight in there, and not particularly well. They actually advise using a knife to cut off the excess plastic. I would also recommend some sort of sandpaper or something like that. You could grind it down without really getting at it too hard with a knife, or, risking cutting yourself. But again, you don't really need one. Everything snapped together well enough for the purposes of this build. The springs are loaded on the camshafts, which, they're taped down, and that could easily spring and go flying everywhere. Again, it is plastic. You don't want to put too much pressure on it, but you have to do enough to shove the pin into the valve. So now they want you to put the rockers on the shaft, on the camshaft, and getting the orientation right is kind of finicky because it's not actually a round bar. It's got a lip to one side. It's got a flat edge on one side. So the orientation actually matters. And again, these are asymmetrical mirror image parts. Symmetrical mirror image parts, I should say. And then you label everything A and B, so it's really not that hairy, especially if you're not in a rush. And of course, I was trying to do it as moderately quick as possible. I do still like my screwdriver, but theirs is magnetized, it's longer, it's not a bad little screwdriver for this. Yep, that was the wrong side. That was me checking to make sure that the camera was still going. Another thing I don't particularly love about this kit is that these paper bits just go over that. They only fit one way because the pins go through, but the paper I got was a little rounded and didn't really want to stay in there, so you kind of had to try to hold everything all at once while you're doing it. Not the greatest thing ever, but manageable. Now remember, that crankshaft is still in backwards, and I am now making it much harder to reverse. Alright, so here are the camshafts. This is where the orientation actually matters. The rocker shafts are the ones that are perfectly round and shorter. The camshafts are the ones with the flat edge on the side. Now I'm starting to think, this doesn't look like the picture. I think it's backwards. I'll keep going. Yeah, now I am fully aware that it's backwards, and I'm trying to figure out, can I get at it from the bottom, because there's less steps there. Nope, can't do that. Alright, so I gotta put the bottom back on, and take it apart from the top down. I've gotta take the cylinder heads that I just put on there off, to get at the screw to take it off the base. Okay, flip it around. I actually got pretty good at this by this point. And now the base is back on, the correct way. Before I lock everything down, I want to be absolutely sure that the front is the front. So I'm skipping ahead in the book a little bit. Now I'm sure, so I'm tightening everything back up. Putting those cylinder heads back on. Again, the paper only fits one way, but it's bent and kind of finicky, and it doesn't really add very much to it. It's really just meant to be the seal that exists in the engine. I don't want to get anything upside down or backwards again. All right, looking good. Again, now things are starting to get back to where they only fit one way, making it a lot easier. Trying to figure out how this gear is supposed to get on here. Now, this is where I had a little trouble. I had to try to get this gear on there, and again, the camshafts they have a flat edge, so it only fit one way, and this is where I actually damaged my desk, because I tried to shove that gear on there as much as I could with folded paper underneath it, and that was not strong enough. It just punched straight on through to my desk and made a nice little dent in it. Now I'm trying to get everything aligned for the timing. The gear needs to go down. Can't get away with not doing it. And it's on there in the correct orientation. It's just not slipping on because there's some difference in the shape of it or some rough edge on it. Now I'm going to go get a hammer. Trying to tap it down with the book so I don't damage the plastic. And there's the hole in the desk. Let you guys hear some of the audio. The camera shaking is from the hammer hitting. Now, the other thing I didn't realize at this point was that I really should be using a hammer with a flat head on it. This one is one of those ones that's got all the bumps in it, and I didn't realize I was going to have to deal with the other side of it as well, and that made things fit hard on the other side as well, which, yeah, that was fun. So right about here, I figure out that the small gear is actually supposed to go all the way through on this shaft to be almost up against the block of the engine there. There we go. Now, bada bing. There you go. So now I'm putting all the pulleys on there and trying to wrap the, there you go, better view. Trying to get the timing to look right, rotate everything to the correct position, and then align everything and fit it with the pulley. The belt. And fit it with the belt. Now we put the cover on there, and now everything's going to stop slipping off. Much, much more secure with that in there. Everything looks like it's rotating good. Check to make sure the camera's still recording. Now we get to the chrome pieces. The expensive stuff. There's a couple of washers in this kit that look like they're garbage, but they're not. They're actually used, so don't lose any of the parts as you're going here. They do give you extra screws, but everything else there's exactly the right amount of. Looks good. Now at this point they ask you to put the batteries in because you're going to try to align the distributor to fire the pistons, to fire the spark plugs at the correct time in the cycle. Now we get to the electrical bits, nice and tangled. Now this is where I'm going to have more trouble with that camshaft because again, it's got that one flat side and it only fits in there correctly, and I've beat the other side of the other end of the engine with a hammer. So I want to be really sure that I really want that distributor on there because I'm going to have to force it on there because I've now flattened the end of the rod. And I'm gonna need the hammer again. So I was worried that since I punched through paper with this hammer before, that I was gonna knock the camshaft completely through the plastic cover on the other side. I decided, well, it's not going to work like this, so I'm going to have to make it fit on there. Now I should have taken the fan off, but the way I was working, I had a metal stool behind me to control the camera, and I was able to actually put this on the edge of that and hit it squarely enough that it wasn't going to worry. I didn't have to worry about the fan getting knocked. All right, hammer time. Now it's as flat as I can make it. That actually went on easier than I expected. Much easier than the other side of things, but now it's on there forever, and will only fit that rod. Again, the orientation was correct, it just wouldn't fit on there because I had beaten it with the hammer, and on the other end of it, for some reason, some manufacturing thing, again, this is where some sandpaper might be useful because you could sand that edge down to make it actually fit properly. So now I'm trying to get the timing of the distributors correct, because they're off just a little bit, and they give you a little bit of twisting room to make it fit, and I'm going, how do these fit in here? Oh, it's on the other side, okay. But I don't think it's possible to get it exactly right, because the amount of twist that they give you, the range of motion, doesn't account for the differences in that. It's a model engine. it lights up. Who's gonna know? Me, but you also now. This is a bit of a cable management thing. There we go. Much better. Now this is the part where things get kind of crappy. I don't love... This all just kind of fits together and snaps in there. It's not the prettiest thing, and it doesn't really add very much to the aesthetic. It is a part of the engine, but it doesn't... It's not positively affixed in there. It's just sort of snapped in. And same with these exhaust manifolds. They're just kind of... They click in, and it's very brittle because the process by which they add the shiny metal to it doesn't lend itself to bending very much. It's very brittle. And there you go. It is working.
All right, here it is. Let's go. And there you have it. Overall, I'd say the build was not at all terribly crazy. The trick really was understanding the instructions, particularly with the orientation of the crankshaft, as we saw. And for me, one of the bigger problems was that the camshaft was some sort of twisted or something, and it was not easy to get anything on either end. I had to bust out the hammer a few times. I also had trouble with these distributors. I don't know how much of that was also the fault of the camshafts, but the rotation along the available axis that they give you is really not sufficient to correct for any distributor offset. So the LEDs are going to be a little off on this thing, but you know, you get the idea. It's a model engine. Come on, what do you want? You really do get the idea of the inner workings of an engine from it. It's certainly a good educational opportunity. My other complaint is that it really doesn't have an off switch. Once you push the on button, you are locked into that 30-second or 60-second cycle and all the sounds and everything that comes with it. The only option is to take the battery out, which isn't really a great option. But the one I was originally building with my dad required you to manually crank the thing, so it's got a motor. I can't complain. Just be very, very careful about how you align the crankshaft, and good luck with the camshaft. You may need a hammer. Don't bang it into your desk like I did. That was a bad move. Revisiting this after 15 years is emotionally heavy. Would I have loved to do this with my father and learned about engines the whole time? Of course. But that time has passed, and now I've finished it, so I can check that off my list. But yeah, that's it. I hope you found that interesting. I certainly did. And I hope that you'll be back again next week for another interesting video. Until then, stay curious.